Okay. As you can see there on the screen, that is the Disney depiction of the character Robin Hood, who didn't actually exist as a person in history. He was part of folklore stemming from as early as far back as the 11th, or excuse me, the 12th century, on into the 16th century. Now, I'm going to teach you a little lesson about the way Democrats have they misrepresent history and characters all the time to justify their policies. And Robin Hood is often used as a an example of that. But there's one problem with that. Robin Hood did not actually take from the rich to give to the poor. Robin Hood took from the government. You see, King John, who you see depicted in several uh, versions of Robin Hood. Now, he was a real guy, or at least the King John that uh, the Robin Hood story as villain was sort of based upon. He overtaxed his people. And in those days, it was, well, let's leave our rich bourgeoisie friends alone and keep them happy and the powerful to help me maintain my power. And I will tax heavily the poor, the downtrodden, the those who barely survive. You remember in the Disney version of the cartoon, the sheriff comes by and he comes by and like one of the little mice have a like a box with a crutch, and one of them's sick, and they're barely surviving. And they got one coin, and the sheriff just comes in and confiscates the coin. Well, that's why Robin Hood was created because the government of the time, the king, who had power unchallenged, would send his thugs around to essentially steal what little money that poor people had in taxes. Now, that is not what goes on today, despite what your Democrat friends have told you. Robin Hood did not take from the wealthy, he took from the government and those who had a lot of power and influence in that government. So, and he, the reason why he gave to the people, he felt like the money was theirs to begin with. That it was seized uh, immorally. I mean, like in the cartoon, they take the only coin the little mouse family has. Today, it's different. You hear them talk about let's tax the wealthiest 1% because we need to make taxes fair. Well, if you've seen my IRS graphical chart, you would understand a simple little lesson, and that is that the top 50% of income earners pay 96.9% of all income taxes. The top 20% pay 70% of income taxes. So that leaves those who are living in poverty, below the poverty line, and the poor paying about 3.69% of all federal taxes. Yes, that's truth. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this today is this has to do with another lie, and we're going to take a look at that lie. Okay, you will often hear uh, among Democrats and their myths that we should tax businesses and corporations more. And well, these are the words of idiots. First of all, let's take a look at a couple of truths here. Uh, when they talk about uh, businesses needing to carry more of the tax burden, you probably think, well, that's a good idea, don't you? After all those huge, rich, evil multinational corporations should pay more taxes so that the little people can keep more of their own money to spend. If those thoughts seriously cross your mind, then you have fallen victim to a massive liberal con job, a massive Democratic Party con job. For starters, let's consider these points. There is absolutely no limit at all to the government's desire for your money. No limit whatsoever. I have asked liberal politicians before, what's the most someone should pay in taxes? And you'll get these crackpot answers, but the reality is there is no limit to what one individual should have to pay in taxes, not in their minds. Uh, they want as much of our money as they can possibly get their hands on, and they will keep reaching into your pocket and grabbing your cash right up to the point where they start to, well, let's say, seriously fear you're about to cut their hands off. These liberal politicians will use any subterfuge, any lie, any trick that they can to keep you from realizing just how much the government really costs you in terms of health care. This all went on before the Healthcare Act. It's been their playbook for 4 years. One example: during Bill Clinton's 1998 State of the Union speech, he bragged that America had the smallest government in decades. The liberals in the House chamber dutifully applauded this lie. Then Clinton went on to propose a federal budget that would consume 20.1% of the gross domestic product. The total value of all goods and services produced in the United States during that year, not once since the end of World War II has our government consumed that much of the GDP. Now, just how uh, reader, do you square Clinton's claim to the smallest government in decades with the reality of this budget proposal? Let's go back, supposedly, to businesses paying taxes, supposedly. When politicians think they have pushed the individual taxpayers to the breaking point, they will start to talk about raising taxes on businesses and those evil corporations. Washington politicians, especially the liberal ones, I believe, or they believe, that the average American actually thinks that businesses and corporations pay taxes. Unfortunately, sadly, these people are right. The average American thinks just that. But the average American is dead wrong. Here is a lesson that liberals do not want you to learn. And some Republicans, I've always said the difference between Democrats and Republicans is that the Republicans are just a little slower getting their socialism implemented. But they know it's true. They don't want you to find out. The following the following paragraph that I'm about to read to you is pornography to a liberal. The only entity in this country that pays taxes is the individual. Businesses, corporations do not pay taxes. They collect taxes from individuals and pass them on to the government. When you go into a store and you pay sales tax, or you pay a special tax on gas or cigarettes, whether it's been lumped in or not, that tax is not for the store to keep. They have to pay those taxes over to the government, just like with payroll taxes. They don't just collect the taxes and sit on them. Well, sorry, I lost my computer screen there for a moment. Let's try this again here, folks. Uh, and and this is you can research this. You don't take my word for it. Uh, Virtually every economist in the country who is not working for the government will concur with this statement. On second thought, maybe I had better expand on that. Let's try this again. Virtually every economist in this country who is not working for the government or teaching in a college or university will concur with this statement. When a business or a corporation takes money out of corporate earnings to send it off to the government in the form of taxes, that money isn't created out of thin air. If the money has not been paid to the government as taxes, it clearly would have been used for some other purpose. The money could have been used to pay salaries, to give employee raises, to pay stockholder dividends, pay profits to owners, buy raw materials, have a company barbecue, put new leather upholstery in the corporate jet. You get the general idea. Sending that money to Washington means it isn't going to be spent by the company elsewhere. Now, if that money was going to uh, just used for salaries, where did all that money actually come from? Those dollars came right out of the pockets of employees who would have received a raise. Uh, and when you start to think about all this and how much BS is actually believed, but those employees would have received a raise, or of the new employees, uh, more could be hired. So, what if no raises or new hiring were in the picture? Then the money might have been paid to stockholders, dividends, or to the owners of as profit. Either way, when the money is diverted to taxes, it has to come out of the pocket of some individual, the individual stock owner or the owner. Individuals pay taxes. Businesses do not pay taxes, they collect them and they give them to the government. So you can rest assured if taxes go up on corporations or businesses, they're not going to pay those taxes. They're going to collect them as a tax collector does and give them to the government. It is not going to benefit your life. It is not going to affect your tax rate. It is not going to have anything to do with the quote interest of fairness, as they often say. Whenever a dollar is spent, it eventually filters down to an individual somewhere. The person who provided the beef, the plastic forks for the employee barbecue, the worker who built the stomach pump used on half the staff that night after the company barbecue, the man who stitched the new leather upholstery in the business jet, or the farmer who raised the cow that gave up its life for the cause of hamburgers and comfortable corporate posteriors. Our economy operates for the benefits of all individuals. Our profits and earnings are eventually spent to benefit individuals. And all that costs of doing business are eventually paid by individuals. The individual is the basic unit of our economy, not the corporation, not the business. This is where the buck stops. So uh, when a corporation, pays a dollar in taxes, that dollar ultimately comes from the individual's pocket. When taxes are raised on corporations or businesses, those taxes are paid by individuals somewhere else. The employer who goes without the raise, or the employee who goes without the raise, the person who doesn't get hired, the stockholder who sees his dividend decrease, the farmer who can't get a good price for his cow, somewhere an individual being pays. The business on corporation collects the money. The business or corporation collects the money and it goes off to Washington, D.C. So when you hear some liberal yammering about the need to raise taxes on businessmen and the rich corporations, That politician is talking about raising your taxes, the little guy, just for the hell of it. You should drop him a line and let him know that you're on to him. Especially, your congressman, your senator, especially if they're Democrats and they use that 1% line. It's a 40-year-old playbook. These people haven't changed their strategy in 40 years. Every election since remember when I was talking about Social Security? Every election since 1952, the Democrats have use Social Security as a tool to call and scare the hell out of old people and tell them, hey, if you vote for those Republicans, they're going to take away your Social Security. It is a bleeping lie. Just like their view of Robinhood is a bleeping lie. It's absolutely not true. Robinhood took back what the government immorally and well, it was under the law of the times, so they didn't have much choice. But I mean, if you but that's what these 86,000 new IRS agents are about, folks. There's 400 billionaires in the United States. We already know the IRS has got a big building in D.C. and a big building in, I think, Charlotte, a big building in Atlanta. They have offices all over. They already have enough employees to investigate or to get to audit the 36,000 or so millionaires. We used to have many more than that, or the 400 billionaires that we have in America. Biden hired these people to come after you. Remember, he already lied. He originally said he wasn't going to raise the taxes of people making under $400,000 a year within a month of being elected. That changed to households. So, which is it? Is it households? Is it individuals? Because that's a big difference. That's a huge difference. So, if you'll notice, this is how they play the politics of class warfare to turn the poor against the rich, to make the rich see the poor as a bunch of sponges. All the while, they gain more power, they gain more money, they are responsible for you not getting that raise more than anyone. Washington, D.C. is responsible for your health care being so expensive, more so than anyone. I and this, I got to tell you, this health care bill was the biggest lie ever sold on to us. One minute it's a tax, one minute it's a benefit. So, or which is it can't be both. It was a bill that contradicted itself from day one. And this is just how when the Democrats, I'll give you a piece of advice. When the Democrats or any Washington politician says, "I want to do something for you," run like hell, because these people have, I talked to you about job security when it comes to Social Security one night. This is how these people create a need for themselves. Independent people, as I've told you before, individuals, they don't vote for Democrats. So the Democrats talk about the poor and the elderly and the downtrodden and the young folks. They never talk about individuals. They never talk about individual liberties. You don't have rights as a group. You don't have liberties as a group. You have liberties as each of us, all of us as individuals. And that's the way our Constitution was set up. They do this by promoting the idea that we're a reckless democracy. We are not. We are a constitutional republic. If you want to protect individuals, if you want to protect people, you don't try to protect groups, because you're not trying to protect minorities. And the smallest minority, as Ayn Rand said, on earth is the individual. Those who claim to be defenders of minority groups are not defenders of minorities. It's that simple. This is the playbook that Democrats have played over time and time again. They just get kookier. every 10 years. That Healthcare Act, that thing had been in Washington for 50 years. They just tweaked it every decade to fit the times. But the reality of it is, the biggest lie you were ever sold was, well, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Well, that didn't exactly turn out to be true for a lot of people, especially when employers left and right started dropping their coverage to pay the fine, which was cheaper than insuring their employees. So that right there should tell you it had nothing to do with providing more health care to people. And they'll defend it. Well, I think that 10 million people have health care. They don't say anything about the 10 million people that lost their health care the day that damn thing passed in Florida. We have a little restaurant over in Southmont, or we did. It was the third or fourth Biscuit King. And when they closed down because they could not comply with the Healthcare Act and have that many employees. I remember talking to one of the owners about it. So just don't buy liberal myths about this. We need to tax the wealthiest 1%. The wealthiest 1% already pay an enormous amount of taxes. But they're coming for you next, folks. You Democrats who thought you were safe all this time because weren't in that super wealthy class. That is why they needed to hire 86,000 armed IRS agents requiring no previous experience. They put people out on the street with guns. It shows you how serious they are about their gun laws and their fascination to disarm you, the individual. These people are the most dangerous people on earth. They are using the radical environmentalism to absolve the concept of private property rights. They are trying to, their goal is to essentially depopulate. They believe the earth is overpopulated. They listen to them. They will constantly talk about there's too many people. We're killing the planet. We're doing this. We're doing that. If half of them would sign up to off themselves, I don't think I'd have a criticism on. But I certainly don't see a line anywhere from that. Uh, but no, oh no, it's always someone else. They're always happy for someone else. And what was it? The Prime Minister of Great Britain said, Margaret Thatcher, the problem with socialism is sooner or later you run out of other people's money. Oh, that's so true. And Robin Hood is a fair example. Yes, Robin Hood was a noble character. Yes, he was a good man. Even though it was a legendary, it's a fictional character, he never really existed because he fought this corruption in the government. And when the poor and the downtrodden had their money and their wealth seized, he would take bags of money, gold, wherever, from these rich elites who went without nothing and just came around to suck the poor dry. That is not what happens today, folks. I can assure you, our wealthy pay the overwhelming share of federal income taxes. Now, I'm not talking about your state. I'm not talking about your sales tax or what, but when it comes to federal income taxes, uh, it is the top 2% and the top 5% who pay an enormous amount. There are people like Michael Moore out there who think the wealthy should pay 75% of their taxes. Can you imagine? You work all your life, you build a business, you acquire property, assets, income, wealth, just to have the government come along and tell you, okay, pay your fair share. Pay your fair share. You paid in all your life. You paid for your employees. You invested so they would have health care. You and you you pay your people well. So why should you have to turn around and pay large amounts of taxes when you're already doing it. Remember, groups, corporations, businesses are tax collectors. They do not pay taxes. So when you hear Barack Obama, we need to take the corporate tax rate to back to 20 some percent. So we pay their fair share. What are they talking about their fair share? It's just how Washington justifies controlling as much private wealth as they possibly can. They create this false idea that the poor are getting overtaxed when the bottom half pay about 3.69%, not 30, 3 out of 100. 97% of all income taxes are paid by the wealthiest people in the country. And with Biden's inconsistency on who was going to have their taxes raised, that should be a red flag to these people. But they're so caught up in uh, their hatred of Republicans and their constant accusations of racism, sexism, homophobia, uh, anti-Semitism, or whatever ism that these people. What about now? It's what aboutism. But everything these people believe is simply a lie. Do not believe their analysis. Do not believe what they say about Robin Hood. Robin Hood was a person who really fought for the poor. The, the war on poverty started in the 1970s and 60s by Lyndon Baines Johnson. Has it been effective? It's been about as effective as the war on drugs. And eventually you start a war on something, you start to see victory. And no, we have more people living in poorer classes. We don't have people. Americans will do their best, and they will be excellent when government steps out of their way. But government cannot allow people to get smart and know the true story of Robin Hood and know the true stories of those who really fought for what was right. So the next time some leftist tries to tell you that Robin Hood stole from the rich, no, he stole from the government. And it's just a perfect example of how these myths, these liberal myths. Remember, I talked to you the other night. So much of what liberals believe is untrue. What did Ronald Reagan say? The problem with our liberal friends is not that they're uh, ignorant, but that they know so much that isn't so. And that could never be more true than in today's world. They've only gotten even far more worse. They will continue to play class warfare. They will continue to divide people by race. Barack Obama, first black American president. More racial division ever since he was elected than ever. Trump Trump gets the highest number of minority votes than any other Republican. It's insane. And if they did not control media and academia, they would not get away with this crap. So just remember who Robin Hood actually targeted. It was not a bunch of real rich, wealthy people. He targeted the government, kind of like the oligarchs. You've heard them talk about the Russian oligarchs who control all the money and the power ultimately. And that's why Putin let them keep their money when he took over, because he knew it was going to be another situation similar to what went on in the United Kingdom, in England, in the from the 11th to the 15th century. Robin Hood was written as a protest. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.